Okay, welcome everyone to our 22nd episode of Tuesday Night Live for 2017. And without any further ado, I'll hand you over to Pete. How you going, Pete?
Thanks, Phoenix, very much, and welcome everybody to the AFL Crowcast Tuesday Night Live edition. Great to have you all with us, and Phoenix, great to have you back from your little bit of a hiatus there. How have you been, mate?
Not too bad. Still got the mouse, or the mice, I should say, hammering away on the treadmill, but we've managed to get things up and running, so back to normal.
Great to have you back, and of course our regular panellists, Nikki and Macca tonight. How are you guys?
I'm well, but I think Nikki's struggling a little.
Just a little bit. The news is going to be interesting.
Yeah, you're sounding a bit nosy there, Nikki, so we'll see how you go. We'll kick things straight off with AFL news with Nikki. I might, just before you jump in there, Nikki, I had a little bit of information come my way this evening, just in relation to one of our uncontracted players, in particular Mitch McGovern. I know there's been a little bit of news leaking out around the place, but I had some pretty reliable stuff today that said that he has committed to stay and will turn his back on some larger offers in exchange for a shot at success with the Crows. And so they're working out the finer details. So I guess just confirmation of some other stuff that has been leaking through the media in the last week or so.
Outstanding.
Yeah, I think know that Macca and Phoenix and I had a little discussion on Sunday night about it, and pretty much the three of us were all the same, that he's the one we really don't want to lose. Lever we can actually cover. I mean, he's a really quality player, but that position can be covered a lot easier than what Gov actually brings to our side.
It's always a lot harder. I was originally in the Lever camp, but no, I've been swayed, and it's always a lot harder to get a mercurial forward than it is to get a very good backman.
The thing that I noticed from the week's signings is that if you cast your mind back to the Dangerfield saga, just towards the end of the season, there was a rash of signings as well. And I took this year's rash of signings to mean that things have been wound up, which means that Gov and Lever's positions have been decided one way or the other, and I wouldn't mind betting that we end up with both, but I'm glad to hear that at least it looks like we've got Gov.
All right, Nikki, fire away.
Well, I think the big news from the weekend was, of course, the match review panel stuff, and every man and his dog and had an opinion about Spriggs up. I actually thought that was fair, that it was just a financial sanction. It wasn't a good look. They had to get him under misconduct because there's nothing in the tribunal guidelines which kind of clarified it. And they did point it out during our game that Gov actually went up with his knee, got a guy in the back of the head in a marking contest, and that's perfectly fine. And we've seen numerous players actually put their foot out, and they're actually allowed to do it. We never like it when it happens, particularly if it happens to our team, but it is something that is allowed under the rules of the game. It was just unfortunate that it got Dowhouse in the head. You've got to be a little bit more careful. So I thought the fine was okay in that respect, and it set a little standard about that. It's not acceptable, but that's where it's at. What do you guys think?
Well, it is acceptable. He should never have been fined for that. Eddie goes up with his boots up all the time when he goes for a mark, and half the time they're unrealistic attempts. He never gets done for that. He gets done for the unrealistic attempt, but not for the Spriggs out. And you're allowed to protect yourself. And some of the whining that's been coming out of ex-AFL players, and even Pete, the current West Adelaide Football Club president, with regards to this, has been ridiculous, and it shouldn't have even gone to the MRP, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, in the opposite camp to you, I played footy and I've watched a heap of footy, and I've never seen anybody take a normal ball, not a mark. It's not a marking attempt, so there's no comparison to that. This is just receiving a handball, and I've never seen anybody go up with their boot that high and hit somebody in the head. And
You're allowed to protect the space around you, though, Macca, in that instance. Now, just in terms of his movement, because there were a few comments like people thought he did it deliberately because, the leg extends. What he actually did, and this is coming from my gymnastics background, we actually do a move like that. That's actually, you turn in the air to do a leap like that, and your leg will extend. That's just natural for the body. You cannot control that. So there was no way was that intentional from Green at all, and I really disliked, and I agree with you on that point, Phoenix, I really disliked a lot of the people were trying to hang him because they were saying, oh, he really meant to do it.
I'm not even saying he meant to do it. I'm saying that it's dangerous, and it's something that I haven't seen in all my years of playing or watching football. I've never seen it, and I don't want to see it because if a boot in the head is very, very dangerous. And Phoenix quoted Eddie flying for a mark. Guys not flying for a mark, that's been in for 1,000 years, and that's part of the game. If you don't like it, we'll petition against it. I'm saying I don't like this particular part of it.
Macca, you're whinging about it being dangerous, and yet you're saying that all bets are off when it comes to going for a mark. What would have happened if Toby Green had done the other possibility and gone up with his knee out, and Dowhouse ran into his knee with his cheekbone and busted his jaw? Would you have been similarly as whiny about it then?
I'm not whining at all. I'm saying that I don't like it. I think that it sets a precedent, and that means that if it's okay for Green to do it, everybody's going to go up and put their boot out when they take the ball, and somebody's going to get hurt.
But answer the question. What if he'd have gone up with his knee instead of his boot?
Well, it's a relevant question because he didn't. But if he went up with his knee, he's very unlikely to have caused anything because the player, with his leg up and extended, I mean, it's a fair distance away from where the guy's actually taking the ball. And I don't believe he would have copped the one in the face.
Surely the most contentious thing that came out of the MRP, and I'm not downplaying. I mean, I thought the whole incident was a bit overplayed purely because it was Toby Green, to be honest. But
yep, I'm with you on that one, Pete.
And surely the most astonishing thing to come out of the MRP this weekend has been Redpath and his slap on. And I know that you probably were, Nicky. I'm sorry to jump in, but I just, for the life of me, cannot see how we are suspending a player for 3 games. And I know that he took a punt and went to the tribunal, and I know all that. He could have had the early plea, but to even set it at 3 down to 2 for the original action,
Yeah, but Pete,
I'm completely just.
It wasn't 3 down to 2 for the original action. It is 3 down to 2 because he has such a poor record. So that ups what it normally would be. It would have normally been a lower penalty with what he did.
But for what? A penalty for what?
A strike.
How is that a strike?
Because striking under the tribunal rules considers also an open hand. They actually allow an open hand as a definition of a strike.
And because Phil Davis has gone into the, group of players that seem to think it's okay to do swan dives after, pathetic little taps, it suddenly he's reported as a strike. I mean, surely no one can think that we've got things right when we see a player suspended for 3 games for that action. And I don't care. You can go through all of the machinations of how they arrive at that, whether it's, because he went to the tribunal, because he had a poor record, blah, 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 blah. The fact remains is that he's been given 3 games for nothing, just for a pathetic slap.
Yeah,
I mean, come on.
No, it wasn't just a pathetic slap. It was to the throat area, and we have discussed before that actually the throat is probably a worse area to get than the head. That can cause a lot more damage. And so the throat is part of the head area. The head is sacrosanct. He connected with him in the head. GWS tried to help him out. The medical report was clear that Davis had no issues. There was no treatment on the night for him. There was no repercussions out of it. It's just the tribunal, with his bad record and everything else, and the crackdown that they've started doing on hits to the head area, which includes the throat, no go.
So he gets 3 games, and Ollie Wines gets a suspension, gets a fine.
Oh, the Ollie Wines
for
one
his
was
action.
disgusting.
You've stolen my line now, Pete, because I was going to raise
Sorry,
that.
sorry, Macca, but I couldn't help but put, because the whole thing's just it is a mess.
Yeah,
Absolute mess.
And look, that's why we're never going to get agreement amongst us, because it is a mess. Because I'm actually in your camp there, Pete, about that. Firstly, Davis overacted massively to what was a pretty minor blow, really. And whatever you want to call it, Nicky, it wasn't worth. And even with bad penalties and anything, you just got to be realistic. And it wasn't worth 3 games. I mean, it just wasn't.
No, it wasn't. But, Macca, you have to take into account that other stuff, because that is how the tribunal works.
I know.
They want to discount things, and we've had this for the past couple of weeks, and it was what did Hawkins in. They said no more of this, and he went and bloody did it. Redpath knew they're doing this, they're cracking down on those type of hits. He has a bad record. He still went ahead and did it. He's a dipshit.
Yeah, but I would have much rather had the blow that Davis got, if you want to call that a blow, than when Wines gave, and he's got a massive body, Wines, and a great big arse, and he belted it straight into the head of the other bloke, and I cannot believe he did not get suspended.
I think the repeat offender here is actually Phil Davis, because wasn't he the one that copped the throat punch from Tommy Hawkins last year as well?
And they had to bury him.
He went down pretty hard then too.
Had to bury him and dig him up again, yeah.
Well, and he's obviously very sensitive in that area. But for me, the Wines ones, I'm a little shocked that didn't get to the threshold of a suspension, because he jumped off the air. He jumped off the air. He jumped off the ground.
And that's been a principle in football for years and years and years, that in regards to the bump, even before the whole head sacrosanct stuff that's come in recently, in judging whether a bump is fair or illegal, one of the key indicators is whether someone jumped prior to impact. And you're right, Nicky. Wines jumped into the body, and that in the past has always been a negative factor in terms of determining the result. If Wines had kept his feet, similar to say a Jack Viney last season, he might have been better off. But I can't believe that Wines didn't get anything for that.
Well, the indicator to me is that it just seems to me like every Tuesday night we roll up and we lose a third of our show talking about ridiculous MRP decisions, and it just happens week in, week out. It drives me up the bloody wall.
Well, just to end this discussion, but one final little point was something I found out regarding the match review panel, is that when they actually go through and look at everything else, they're allowed to look at precedent to make a decision. But clubs are not allowed to bring up precedent if they want to challenge it at the tribunal.
I think the whole thing, it becomes subjective again. It should be very simple, and we've talked about this earlier. If you hit someone, whether it's in play or not in play, you go. Simple as that. There's no degrees. There's no looking at the outcome and whether the guy got up straight away or whether he had a broken jaw. The simple fact is that if you commit the act, and don't forget that in the past there used to be a charge called attempting to strike, which didn't even consider whether contact was made. I believe if the AFL are serious, they should just cut out striking altogether. So if you hit someone with an open palm or a clenched fist, whether it be in play or out of play, it's automatic suspension. That takes all the subjectivity out of the picture. And it's similar with the bump. if you bump with your feet on the ground, it's a fair bump, and if there's any head contact, it's accidental. If you leave the ground, then all bets are off, and if you cause head contact, then you're gone. These things don't have to be hard. It's just that the AFL continue to try and manufacture outcomes as we've discussed in the past, and as a result, we get all this inconsistency. And as Pete rightly points out, we all sit here every Tuesday night and scratch our heads wondering what the hell's going on.
Good point.
All right, so let's move on to some retirements. So we had the good bloke in Bob Murphy. See, I can't even say it. Bob Murphy announced his retirement today, and so did Josh Gibson. I did find it quite interesting. They were going through the list on AFL 360 retirees and deciding who's going to make it into the Hall of Fame. And they said, "Oh yeah, Pritters has to get in there because he's a Brownlow medalist." No, he doesn't need to be in the Hall of Fame because he won a Brownlow medal once. And then they thought that Watson had to be in there too at some stage, but that'll be down the track. And that just kind of blew me away.
Yeah, I didn't get to see that, Nicky. I was watching 360 and I'm being so bored with all this. You're lovely, Bob, and we all love you and all the rest of it. I went to sleep during it, to be honest. I didn't see the rest of the show.
Yeah, it was Geelong 360 last night, and it was Bob 360 tonight. Just shitful show most of the time.
The Bob Murphy Love Fest. So some of the stuff that Luke Beveridge came out with and some of the other people at Western Bulldogs about, admiring not only what he's done on the field, but also, how amazing he is off the field and what we've all learnt from him, blah, blah, blah. I mean, for mine, he's one of the weakest 300-game players in the competition, and that's no disrespect to Murphy, but he's nothing more than a running halfback flanker. And it's only been in the past... It's a good one, but you watch. He will be in the Hall of Fame, and it'll make a mockery of the Hall of Fame. And similar with Watson, you may as well burn the Hall of Fame down if you put Jobe Watson in, because he was a fair to middling player that came good for 2 or 3 seasons, arguably on the back of some interesting supplements, and then was disgraced. If he makes the Hall of Fame over someone like a Wayne Carey or a Gary Ablett Senior, we may as well just burn the place down.
I actually really felt sorry for Bob Murphy tonight, and he was on 360, and Slobbo is carrying on about where he sits in the amongst the greats of the Western Bulldogs Football Club, and he was comparing him with E.J. Whitten and the other great Western Bulldogs at Charlie Sutton. Who are giants of the Western Bulldogs Football Club, and you could see Murphy was absolutely aghast that he would be talked about in the same breath. And in fact, he described that he said, if those two guys are mountains, he said, I'm just a backpacker.
Well, thank God I went to sleep.
So he was absolutely horrified at being compared. But this is what the media's like. It's just this driving up. And the bloody love fest over Jobe Watson as well was just ridiculous. I mean, how many other sports would be lauding a convicted drug cheat upon retirement? They'd be hounded out of the whatever sport that they're in.
Yep.
But no, with the AFL, and then people said, oh well, he was never found guilty of it. Well, yes, he was. Otherwise, why did he lose his Brownlow? Why did he get suspended for 12 months? Because he was a convicted drug cheat.
Yeah, precisely. And he is still a drug cheat, and he will always be a drug cheat. And for me, because he was captain of that club, and he did not stand up as he should do for his fellow players as their representative, in fact, he led them down that path, that tarnishes him even greater in my eyes. And I don't think he should be anywhere near the Hall of Fame, just because he's a good bloke and they all know his dad and his dad's a good bloke, and because they worked with Bob and he's a good bloke, and so Robbo kind of has to overrate them because he knows them and he's so protective of them. It's like, no, you need to take a step back, mate. But on the Hall of Fame thing, I really dislike the fact that Ken Farmer is not a legend, and he has not been elevated into legend status in there. The fact that he was not included in those first inductions in 1996 was a crock of shit, because I'm sorry, that man's legacy, not only for what he did playing and goal kicking and how amazing he was, but he then went along and thought, okay, I'll coach, won a premiership in his first year, coached for 4 seasons, won a premiership in his last year, and walked away from the game. Not looking at those stacks of all the records of everybody else that's in there, he stacks up against them so well it isn't funny, and better than most of them. The only player who actually has a better goal scoring average than him is Peter Hudson, and that is it.
Well, just telling them in order. Firstly, Phoenix is right about the two that he was talking about. Never should they even be considered for the Hall of Fame. And lastly, Nicky, I think you raised an excellent point on Ken Farmer, and he obviously should be there.
But everybody needs to get there a little bit early and wander around the northern end, because his new statue will be at Adelaide Oval on Friday night.
Are we all stunned? Understand that we're all stunned or something?
We must be.
Sorry, are we all done?
I'm
Save
just
rounds
checking
on
to
news,
see.
Nikki?
Yeah, I'm just checking to see what else there is. There's a couple of injuries, I know, to North. What was it from memory? Just quickly. Zeebel's possibly out for the rest. The rest could be out for the rest of the season, and Dorr definitely is. I know that's they've got an issue there.
Nicky, the other thing too, it's worth noting that Michelangelo Rucci seemed to take great delight in writing a piece to this today, saying that we might have to send, well, probably will have to send one of the 2 rookies that have come off the special list back because of the recoveries of other guys from injuries. But that's not going to be the case, because we've put another one on the long-term injury list. So both Heath and Greenwood can stay.
Very good. All right, look, we'll move along. I just wanted to have a chat tonight about a contracted player, Charlie Cameron. We've talked a lot about the 2 big-name guys that are out of contract and in McGovern and Lever, but just wanted to focus a little bit tonight on Charlie Cameron. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt about the fact that, and the Jungle Drums actually seem to be getting stronger, about the fact that Charlie Cameron will be heading off to, or wanting to head off to, the Brisbane Lions at the end of the season for family reasons. Just wondering what you guys think of Charlie Cameron as a contracted player and his value, and I guess you maybe try and eye off that Port Adelaide first round at the Brisbane hold at the moment. I think it probably will end up being around about pick sort of 13, 14, 15, somewhere around there. Or I guess Brisbane's second rounder will probably look like about pick 18, pick 19. Just wondering where you see that trade, and whether you see us playing hard ball, whether you see us being compassionate, whether you're seeing us looking at it from the point of view that if we don't lose him this year as a contracted player, when we've got some bargaining power, that we may lose him next, uncontracted with no bargaining power.
Well, personally, I don't know about the compassionate part of it, because I am a little bit confused, Pete, because my understanding is, and I did hear that stated again, that his family live in Perth, not Brisbane. Now, he has got some relatives in Brisbane, but his actual close family live in Perth.
No, I think they've moved back. Macca?
Well, I'm only talking about what was quoted on 5AA during the week. Now, those guys do get things wrong, so that might well be right, what you're saying, Nicky. But with Charlie Cameron, I've got mixed feelings. I mean, if for example, we were offered, and I would actually play the Carlton game. You want him, you play, if we are going to do it, play overs. I'd never clear him for a fair deal. And yeah, maybe a high or a very good first rounder might do the trick, and I might be persuaded to let him go. But really, I mean, I think he adds a lot to our team we wouldn't otherwise have because of his sheer pace, and I really would like to keep him.
Yeah, I think if there is a particular compassionate reason regarding that, we've done it before where we will help a player get there. We won't hold them against their will, because that just makes it a horrible, toxic environment for that player and also for the rest of the playing list in that club if you've got somebody who actually doesn't really want to be here. But the other thing is that he is contracted, so we can play a little bit of hardball about that, and that's what I think we should do. But I think it'll happen. He'll get there, and
But
we'll get something fair.
No, I don't want something fair, Nicky. I want something extra because he is contracted, and it's like Carlton with the trade for Gibbs. They were unreasonable in the sense of what they asked for, and yeah, they would have cleared him if we wanted to pay that particular price. Now, and I think we should do the same with Cameron because we have otherwise.
Channel.
Are we on?
Nicky
Yeah,
Nolan.
we're on. We're all good.
We're all sitting here going, somebody say something.
Okay, no,
I was just waiting to see if someone was going to tell us we're on or not. So anyway, we go. Macca, I understand what you're saying about Gibbsy, but I think it's a little bit different because they had him to a 4-year deal, and so the problem that we've got, I think that Charlie, his deal finishes at the end of next year, and so he's free to go at the end of next year. So it's a little bit different, and they're at different points of their career as well. So I think that we need to obviously get the best deal that we can without pushing the boat out too far and losing the opportunity to trade him as a contracted player and having that advantage. And I think that what generally happens is that, people beat their chests about we've got to get fair, particularly an uncontracted player. And I think that, people beat their chests and say, well, we've got to get fair value. I think the reality is that you don't. I think that the way that it works is that really for a contracted player, you probably do get fair value. And as an uncontracted player, you just don't, rather than saying you get overs for an for a contracted player and fair for an uncontracted player. So I don't know. I put it at around about maybe our second round pick this year plus Cameron for that Port Adelaide first round pick that they're holding up there. What do you think?
I think that's really generous. I don't know. I'm probably very mean. I would like to get that first round pick for him, but maybe you're right.
I mean, I'd prefer if we could do the third and Charlie for the first, but, that's what you're kind of aiming for.
Yeah,
if you can't, then push comes to shove, then you'd probably, I think your scenario, Pete, would probably want to get done.
Yeah, I like what you're suggesting, Nicky, much better.
Sorry, what was your suggestion, Nicky? Just the pick 14 by itself?
No, if we were going to package something up with him to get it, I would prefer our third round, not our second, packaged with him. Because I think he's a very unique player.
Yeah, he's a very unique player that doesn't actually do a lot.
No, but when he does, and they're going somewhere, and you don't want to give one of your rivals a leg up.
Fiend, what do you think?
Well, on the open market, I reckon Charlie's worth a second round pick. That's what I think. So I'd probably be doing a third as well. He is contracted, so that puts the ball in our court somewhat.
Yeah, it's nice to actually have power for once.
Well, you never know. Hopefully the rumours aren't all 100% true and we can maybe hold on to him because obviously you'd rather keep hold of Charlie than see him go. But I guess that's one of the possibilities we have to face in the off season. Big game it was against Essendon on Saturday night. Thought the Crows were absolutely fantastic. They were challenged a couple of times, but just seemed to be able to steady and find something when it counted. Matt Crouch again was just huge. His disposal and his ability to clear the ball through traffic has just improved out of sight, and he really is becoming quite a damaging player, almost in the Sam Mitchell role. I think that's the ceiling for him, to get to a player at that level who can just see through traffic and get those kicks going around the corner and get us moving. So I thought that his was an absolutely fantastic game. Luke Brown, I thought, had a huge game on Tip and Woody. He was absolutely brilliant. And I thought Rory Atkins was back to a nice form as well. Just seemed a little bit more confident with ball in hand. But overall,
Sorry, Pete, you still there?
overall a good performance by the guys, I thought.
Yeah, it was, and I think you summed it up quite neatly there. Matty Crouch has been in outstanding form this year, and just seems to be getting better every time he goes around. And I mean, his disposal efficiency was in the 80s, and 30 odd possessions plus his tackles, etc. He's just he is one of the very best midfielders, and I think it would be very, very wrong if he didn't make the All-Australian squad. And the rumours were that he wasn't going to make it, but he should. He's definitely amongst the good midfielders at the moment. I would hate to stand Luke Brown in the game. By God, you'd be lucky to get a kick against that mugger. He just plays lovely and tight, and he just doesn't give much away. In fact, he had himself about 18 possessions at disposal, something like that, and Tipper Woody had about 8. He just took him to the cleaners, and it was lovely to see Atkins get back and play the football that he should be and can, and he did. It was terrific to see it. Overall, it was just one of those games where I just thought, to some degree, it was a different type of game. Could Essendon take the game on, and what I'm liking is, no matter how the game's been played in recent weeks, we managed to combat it and adapt ourselves and get on top of it. So, yeah, I thought we played a pretty good game.
It was very interesting on the weekend. Apparently over in WA, Hayden Ballantyne has a little regular radio spot, and he had a little chat on there and talked about difficult opponents, and he said Luke Brown is the most difficult defender to play on in the AFL.
He is a beauty, absolute beauty, and a lot of people don't even notice him in a game. And
the small forwards do.
Yeah, they do, because he just gives them nothing.
And the other one I thought was really interesting about Matt, because obviously the club has started to get on the front foot regarding the rumours that he didn't even make the squad. And you had Camporelli coming out and just going, well, for the past 18 months, he's actually been either the best or the second best midfielder in our team. His just consistency in his numbers, and Campo's going, he's all Australian for mine. So obviously the club's doing this nice little PR push regarding that they think he deserves some recognition. It was interesting, the coaches' votes, because Pete, on Sunday, the three of us were trying to debate who was best on ground, and we were kind of between Brodie and Matt. But it seems that one of the coaches possibly actually rated Atkins as best on ground.
Well, I did think he had a terrific game. He had 27 disposals, and he used the ball very, very well. And you can just put it down. I guess he's still a young player. He's only just on 50 games, and so you're still going to have that inconsistency. But I guess what we hope is that as he pushes towards 100 games, that we see those games more often, and at least we know what Rory Atkins looks like in terms of when he's on. So hopefully he will push on and have those kind of games a little bit more often than what he's had this year. But bearing in mind it's still a learning curve, he's still only at that 50 game mark.
Yeah, it's all about work rate with him, really, Pete, because I felt he had a couple of games where he was just a little bit lacking in its intensity. But you could tell right from the opening bounce this game against Essendon, he was on right from the word go, and I thought it was the hardest I've seen him go in for the ball too.
Fiend, you're going to say something?
I was just going to say, ironically, what we actually want from Rat as an outside player is a little bit more of what DMAC brings on the inside. If we were able to roll up Dave McKay and Rory Atkins into two similar players, they'd be ideal, because DMAC's probably got a slightly harder edge to his game and doesn't jerk the contest probably as much as Rat does. But Rat's skills on the outside and through traffic and the ability to hit up targets is second to none in our team. So if you have two of those, that'd be pretty unique, I reckon.
I have to say, though, there was that tackle in the back lines that he got holding the ball for that Rat did. And it was such a clever tackle where you've got a player who's ducked their head. That he did it, he knew that that's what he's going to do. I can't give away the free, but I'm going to wrap him up because we're not going to allow a shot on goal. And it was such a clever tackle. I just think that from that start of that game, Rat just seemed to have this mindset of, I'm taking on everything and you're not getting in my way. Because there were a couple of little hard things he did. And from the very start, where you're right, Phoenix, other times he has shirked the contest. But on that Essendon game on the weekend, he didn't at all.
What I noticed, Nicky, was that he didn't check the contest, but he's still having to... You can see him thinking. His first instinct is still to not necessarily avoid the contest, but to remain on the outside. And then you could actually see in a couple of occasions his mind ticking over, and he almost reminds himself, "Oh yeah, I've got to go in," and he goes in. But it's not second nature for him as yet. But at least he's focusing on it, and hopefully it becomes second nature, down the track.
Thought it was interesting, and I think it was the second quarter, to see Jake Lever caught out one-on-one with Danaher a couple of times. So I guess all we can say is for Melbourne clubs looking to recruit Jake Lever as a key defender, buyer beware.
We've said this, though, for weeks and weeks and weeks, that Jakey isn't a key position defender. And he's been shown up a couple of times. And as we were talking about on Sunday night, Pete, it's not having a crack at Jake, because everyone at the club loves him, and irrespective of the current contract situation, we'd all love to have him at our club, and he's a very valuable player. But I think there's this misnomer interstate, or this misapprehension interstate, that he is a key position defender, and he's just not. And as a consequence of that, he's not worth $850.
No, he's not, which is Rant's money, which is ridiculous. We saw what happened to Rance on the weekend when he actually had to defend against somebody who was actually talented in Taylor, and he's not that good. And the other thing as well is Gibson. Gibson's rated as this great kind of defender, but it's because he was on one of the lesser forwards and his ability to come off. Lever is a Gibson and he's a Rance. Now, he's not at Rance's money stage yet. Well, he shouldn't be, but the money that they're talking about is going to put him above what Rance is getting, which is just ridiculous.
Well, everything that's been said is true, so I'm in the same camp. But what would you guys think would be a fair money offer for, given all the interest in him and trying to retain him and yet not overpay him? Probably you would have said 500 in before the increase, so would you go to 650?
Wouldn't go to 650, but I'd go to 6.
Yeah, I think it's around the 6 to 650. It's within that range, depending on what your little kickbacks are within the contract. If he does certain things, I would be okay with it going up to the 650, but he would have to perform and do a certain number of things and poll in certain areas, which is often what they will put in contracts. That's the only way I would accept going up to the 650, knowing that that's what you would have to pay when he's not quite valued at it yet. He's got the ability to get there, but he's still very young. So that's my issue.
I'm going to take all you guys to task on this because a few weeks ago when we were discussing Jake's value, we were quite comfortable to go up to 7 and even 750 at a pinch. And
No, I thought it was 650.
No, it was 700, 750. And I still would rate Jake as a 700 a year player simply because we're writing the contract now and 700,000 now isn't worth 700,000 in a couple of years' time. Secondly, we can't devalue the kid on the basis that he might be going. He's still one of the first picked in our defensive six. And he brings a dynamic to our back six that we lose when he's not playing. He's not a one-out defender, but we don't play him as a one-out defender. And some of the qualities that he brings as a third man up are invaluable, and many other teams would kill to have that guy third man up. On top of that, he's an obvious leader, and he could be a great club man if he decided to make Adelaide his club for life. So I think all that combined means that he's still a very valuable defender, and I would be quite happy for the club to overpay him now, not to the tune of the 800, 850 that some of the clubs in Victoria mooted to be throwing around, but I would certainly pay him above his market value. I reckon his market value, you're right, sits at about 650. I'd be prepared to pay 100,000 more than that.
Okay, fair enough. I'm not going to argue
Fair
with you
call,
because
mate.
I'd like to keep him.
No question. I mean, we would like to keep him. I mean, I don't think anybody is suggesting that we wouldn't prefer him to stay. Like Cameron, you prefer him to stay, no question. But I think that if I guess my opening comment was really just if they're looking at thinking they're getting I just have this feeling that there's a perception that he's a key defender and he's just not.
Nobody can argue with that because I think Phoenix described his role very well.
Just on that, we had some nice little 4 signings. So you had Knights, Kelly, Dode, and Keith signing for 2 years.
Yeah, but I was just going to mention the fact about Keith because he had. I saw him play the SAFL and I thought he was a handy-looking player, but he has absolutely shocked me since he started playing AFL. And his game on the weekend was outstanding. I thought Joe Danaher did not get a goal against him, and even when he didn't get the ball himself, he managed to get that fist in there and get the ball out of range or out of bounds or through for a point or whatever. I thought he played a terrific game, and this guy's going to be very good for us.
Couldn't agree more, Macca. I think we've found a beauty there, and we've done very, very well off the Category B rookie list. All right, look, just moving along. Massive game at Adelaide.
Sorry,
on Friday night. Sorry,
I'm
getting a bit of feedback.
Yeah, sorry, mate. Can I just slip one in, and that's the signing of Dode?
Yeah, sure.
Do we think that Tom's re-signing is an indicator one way or the other on Lever? Because they are interchangeable.
No.
Yeah, I do.
Because he's also interchangeable with Kelly.
Who got signed?
And Kelly got signed as well. You don't, and this is what was annoying me when the news came in and there was a lot of comments on Big Footy that people were jumping up and down going, oh, it means Lever's going. And I'm looking at who the people were talking about getting rid of, etc. It's like, I don't want any of you lot in charge of our list management because you don't have one player and then one replacement. You have more than that on your list, and that's what you have to do. And ones that need to swap back and forth. And you know that with injuries, you have at least sort of about 3 to 4 players that can cover your injuries, suspensions, etc., than what's going on. And we've actually kind of got to field 2 teams as well.
No, Nicky, you're wrong. Yeah, because we've only got a list of 40, and we cover 2 teams by playing development players, and you're missing the perspective of the player. And yes, it'd be great to have 1 plus 2 for each position, but the reality is that we don't have room or money for that. And from the position of Tom Dode, if I was Tom and I was thinking Lever's staying, Kelly's staying, I'm going to go another season without a game, I wouldn't have taken a 2-year contract. I would have tested the market. The fact that he's signed on, I think, is more indicative that he feels he's going to get opportunities next year rather than the club looking to sign on depth. Because don't forget, it's about the player as well as the club.
Yeah, it is, but you're also putting how you would think in that. That might not be what Tom's thinking. And, for me, it could be that he's going, okay, there is this extra depth, but I'm going to fight and I'm going to prove that I can get him, because I'm pretty sure the club would have actually said to him, look at what happened with Kelly, how he came in, that there was an opportunity and he's taken it. That opportunity might be there for you. You have to be ready to take it.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned Kelly, because I heard somebody from the club talking about it. I'm not sure whether it's Jenkins or somebody, but they were asking him, who would you say that Dode plays like? And he compared him to Kelly. He said that he's very similar to him in the way that he plays, except that I think they said he's a little bit more free striding, I'm not sure, with a longer stride or something like that. But that was the comparison he made. He didn't make a comparison to Leave or any of the other taller guys. He made the comparison to Kelly.
I actually think he plays a bit like Keith.
It was certainly good to get those signings, and I agree with you, Finn. I think that there's something in that. I think that some dominoes are starting to fall, and McGovern will be part of that as well.
Peter, so I'm not sure that's right, because also if they didn't re-sign him, it's an open admission that they buggered up the first round draft pick.
They wouldn't care about that. Okay, it's all about that now, mate.
Yeah. All right, moving on to the Sydney game on Friday night. Huge game. Need to have a little bit of a chat about that. Personally, I think it's a really big game for us. I think that there's been a bit of talk about, maybe resting players and the like. I couldn't disagree more. I think that even though we've got a top 2 position sealed, I think this is a really, really important game for our football club, mainly because of the fact that this team have consistently pulled our pants down. I saw the figures last night, and I think in the last 5 or 6 occasions, I think we might have pinched a 4-point win against them or thereabouts, and then the rest of it is all one-way traffic for the Sydney Swans. And I really think we need to make a statement on Friday night and come out and really push for a win.
I couldn't agree with you more, because while we've got a top 2 position sewn up, we have to show that we can beat this team, because they smashed us to smithereens in that semi-final last year, and they just belted us into submission in the opening 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of that game, and it was horrible. And we actually have to stand up to them right from the word go, because if we can do that right from the word go and make a real game of it, I believe we can beat them. But they're not a team you can allow to get on top of you early, and they are very good at getting on top of other teams early.
They are. There's the very interesting post that Pete Doherty actually put up, looking at Sydney's form since round 6, and he actually only listed out there were only 3 really notable games in there, in that they defeated Richmond at the MCG in round 13. That wasn't bad. They did defeat GWS at Spotless in round 17, but their games they go back and forth between the pair of them. They've always been a bit closer in the past couple of years since GWS started pulling the finger out. And then round 20 is defeated Geelong at Cardinia Park, where they do actually have a decent form line at. But the rest of the ones that they've kind of played have been games that you would have expected them to win at them being at an okay level. So it's kind of interesting trying to gauge that form line.
Sorry, I don't quite understand that, because what you're saying is that they've beaten the number 2, 3, and 4 ranked team. That seems like pretty good form to me, and they've beaten them all away from the SCG. So that sounds to me on its face to be pretty good form, I would have thought.
Yeah,
the fifth team is Port Adelaide. Well, they played them earlier in the year when they were in their slump. If they played Port Adelaide now, they'd win by 15 goals.
Yeah, but that's
and
not
then
hard.
they beat St Kilda, they beat Melbourne, they pretty much beat, Who have they lost to in that time? I think
they lost to
only the
Hawthorn.
Hawthorn twice.
One team, Hawthorn,
Yep.
yeah.
The Hawks both times.
The Hawks both times. Otherwise, they're pretty much beating everyone that's put in front of them, and they haven't played us, so they can't claim to beat the number one team. But they've beaten the number 2, 3, and 4 ranked team all away from home. I reckon that's pretty good form, isn't it?
Yeah, I disagree with Nicky. Their form's been outstanding, Nicky, and
No, I wouldn't say outstanding. I'd say it's been good, but Richmond are up and down. Okay, I'm sorry. Don't overrate them. After what we saw on the weekend, Richmond do not deserve to be considered. I'm considering them closer to Port in terms of their up and downness, and I think Revolt actually being back in is actually poor for Richmond. So I'm kind of discounting that Richmond one a little bit. GWS and them, that's a bit like us and Port. But so that one is, yeah, GWS are good, but we know that Sydney does have quality and they match up quite well against them, and there's a lot of venom between those two sides because of what's transpired. And the Geelong at Cardinia Park, they've always played well down there.
Only because it's a similar size ground to the SCG in terms of...
And got injured, and they had no Dangerfield.
The thing is, I'm with Pete on this one. You can't... Sydney's form line is the same as the Crows' form line, because if you're not rating 2, 3, and 4, who are you rating? You can't say that it's a one-horse race between us and Sydney. You've got to rate other teams. You've obviously got to rate GWS. You have to rate Geelong and Richmond, because you can only look at their positions at face value. The only team in the top 8, I reckon, that's in an inflated position is Port, and you can look at their draw and identify that as a reason. But everyone else, you can only rate them where they're sitting. And yes, most clubs are inconsistent this year, but you can't downplay the fact that the Swans have won 12 out of 14 and only lost to one club in that time.
Well, I said exactly the same way. And at the beginning of the season, I made a prediction. I thought that the grand final was going to be out of the two Sydney teams, and I didn't think we'd be good enough this year. Well, we've improved a lot better than I thought we would, and the organic growth that the club talked about, I was very sceptical about that. But well, they've shown that I was wrong in that respect. And obviously, there's 3 good chances in it: the two Sydney teams and ourselves. And I do think that of the two Sydney teams, GWS, and Phoenix often says this, that they've got so much natural talent they don't go as hard as the other teams, and I think he's right. And Sydney they go tough. They play tough footy, Nicky, and
yeah, they do.
And I think that they are going to be a very hard team to beat. If we can beat them, I would be delighted, because it would be a good entree going into the finals.
And the great thing is that the reason this is going to be such a test for us is that Sydney are in a position where they are fighting tooth and nail for a top 4 spot, and so they will be coming at it with the kitchen sink. So this is a great test for us to see where we are and where we are with our mindset, in approaching games like this as well.
Correct, because it'll be like a final, Pete. You are right.
We did talk earlier in the year that there were a couple of signpost games or teams we kind of obviously marked down, go, right, we need to do something here, and do something here. Hawthorn, we got our win against Hawthorn, and then we lapsed back. We couldn't get Geelong in the first one, but we got them in the second game. And Sydney was the other one that we all named as this little signpost game. And I think the fact that we've secured up top 2, you're right, is it takes a little bit of pressure off of us, but of course they're going to be coming hard. And so for me, it's just going to show exactly how much our boys want this.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, Nicky. And
the other thing too is, if you go through the Sydney side, I don't believe there are any apparent weaknesses in their particular side. They've got Buddy up forward, but young Papley is a great little forward up there as well. They got Reed, and then
And Hayward.
Hayward, yeah. I mean, they've got a lot of good players up there. And then, you look at their midfield. I'm not even going to bother to say their names. They just keep going forever. They're just quality, quality, quality. And then down back, well, they've got some very good names down back, particularly since McVeigh's come back and Rampy's come back as well. Grundy, he's the old soldier down there. And they've got some youngsters around them that go, Mills, etc., that go very well. They were a very good side. Their potential weaknesses in ruck, but Sinclair has been playing very, very well for them. And to me, they don't have any apparent weaknesses. Having said that, I'm not saying they're unbeatable, and I think it's just a great test for us.
Yeah, it certainly is.
Their weakness is their speed, and I think that's where we can cut through them if we're aggressive and adventurous. They're not a quick team, Sydney. They're a tough team, and they like it in close, and they'll break free from the clinches and kick to their tall posts. But if we can put pressure on them and break even at the stoppage, I think our pace, which has travelled just about every other team in the competition this year, even troubled Essendon, and Essendon are one of the quickest teams in the competition apart from us. I think Sydney are vulnerable to that speed, and I think away from the SCG, where they can really cramp us up, and don't forget we played that final up there last year, and it doesn't suit us, that small ground. In the bigger spaces of Adelaide Oval and perhaps later at the MCG, I think our pace is our major strength over Sydney.
Any selection changes? I can't see any unforced changes, but some clouds over Sloane and Walker possibly.
Yeah, well, I don't think we'll find out about that until
all talked
maybe
about
the
how weird the ground
last
felt in
minute.
that
I
final
think
last year.
They both keep sort of saying they'll be around, but they keep also have to have fitness tests, so very hard to say. I think what Phoenix was saying about pace is that Sydney aren't a quick side, except for one bloke. That's why they try to use Jones to carry the ball, and the other guy that we have to watch out that they use as a distributor of the ball in the back line is Lloyd. And it'll be interesting what we do about that, whether we allow them to have that loose man in defence, which is Lloyd, because no matter who's got the ball in their back line, they try to give it to Lloyd because he is such a perfect disposer of the ball. They're not a quick side. That's the one thing, and we can move the ball quicker than them, and that's our one potential weapon. And I think that's, if we're going to win the game, we have to be play that particular style of game, but also blanket Lloyd and to some degree blanket Jones.
What impact do you guys think the rain that we're going to have, that started today and is just going to continue up until Friday, and possibly even rain during the game, going to have on the game, do you think?
Well, I don't think it'll have a huge effect. I mean, we've had some terrific results in rainy games this year, and it was interesting to note the comments of Kane Corns before the showdown that he thought that that the weather was going to affect the capacity of our forwards to function and would really advantage Port. And obviously he did no homework at all in terms of the Bulldogs and Freo games where it pelted down and we kicked big scores. So the rain doesn't seem to impact our capacity to score, and we play very, very well in the wet, and so I don't envisage that it'll affect us at all. I think that guys like the Crouch brothers, Sloane, big games for them where they've got to get in cracking against a very, very hard-nosed Sydney midfield, and really, if those guys can just sort of break even, I think we'll be okay as long as they don't get their pants pulled down. You're not expecting them to win that midfield battle. If they can just break even, if they can just halve a few contests and get us moving a reasonable amount of the time, I think that we've, as Phoenix says, we've got speed of ball movement to counter them.
And the other thing is that they like to target a particular player. That's their thing. Is they will go after one player they think is going to be causing the most damage. So are they going to go after Smith or Laird?
Well, or do they finally realise that Matty Crouch is our engine room, and do they actually start sitting on Matty Crouch?
I wondered about that because at the moment nobody seems to have ever tried sitting on him. Although I did notice in the game against Essendon, they did try to man him up at the centre bounces in the second half when they realised that he was getting quite a bit of the ball. But
and he still kept getting a bit of the ball. I think he's because he's such an in and under player and his strength is so good at getting like at least his arms free and being able to then fire out that quick handball, etc. Or he does that little shuffle with his hips to kind of break the tackle a little bit. That I think he's harder to tag than Sloane would be.
He must like playing with Sloaney because Sloaney gets so much attention and he just seems to get off the leash.
Yeah, one thing I remember from last time we played Sydney is Matty getting pushed under the ball a little bit and getting a little bit bullied around stoppage. He doesn't seem to have had that problem to the same extent this year, obviously. But it'll be interesting to see whether the big bodies of Sydney try again to outmuscle him in close because he's still not the biggest lad going around. Look, I think they will try and stop our run off half back, and they'll try to use blokes like Rowan to counter, with their own slingshot style. I think we'll see a lot of the game played across our half forward line, to be honest.
Just want to shout out to Richard Douglas. He's had a stellar few weeks. He's really come into some very, very good form. He's adding some real bite and pace around the midfield for us. So well done to Dougie for picking up his game and actually just elevating a little bit in the last month or so.
Well, you did right. He's had a terrific year, really, and particularly the last 6 weeks or so, he's been exceptional. And he up until early in the season, he was one of the maligned players, and like David McCabe. But both those two players have played excellent footy in the last 6 weeks, and I don't know whether, and I don't go to big footy all that often these days, but I hope to God that they've stopped slamming and kicking the shit out of them as they usually do.
No, I think they've been good players. I think we're a pretty good chance on Friday night if we can bring the right mindset. And I think that's going to be the key because we have wrapped up the top two spot, and I think depending on availability of players, if we've got a full deck out there, if we come with the right mindset, then I think we're a very, very good chance of knocking them over, which is very important. All right, moving on to our last segment of the show is, of course, Nikki's Cock Womble of the Week award.
Well, this one's lovely and short. Tom Lynch. He won the very first ever Cockwomble we ever did for a miss inexplicably from the goal square. And I'm sorry, I know Dimmer had to have a go with whinging about the umpiring and everything else, but it's got to be Tom.
Yeah, I can't think of any immediate nominees. I think that's not a bad nominee. I was watching. I just really, like everybody else, just could not believe he could miss from there. It was It was like the Josh Bruce one in down in Tasmania, wasn't it?
That fell over.
Yeah. Somebody actually said on the board today they remember there was, I think it was like one of Scott Welsh's first games or something, and it was at Etihad, and he managed to kick the post and not the ball. But yeah, it's got to be Tommy, and particularly after finding out that he'd been razzing Richard Douglas about his miss that he did a few years ago at Etihad against Essendon in the week leading up to it. It's like, Tommy.
Tom Lynch it is the Cockwomble of the week for this week. All right, Phoenix, do you want to just close us out with some pushing some of our sites?
Yep, absolutely, and we don't have any outro music because I'm still on Smell of an Oily Rag, so, but don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at AFL Crowcast. We have Scorpus and myself on Thursday night for the team selections. Unlikely to have a main break show on Friday night, but we will be back for the wrap on Sunday evening, of course.
Beautiful. Thanks, everybody, for listening to another edition of AFL Crowcast, the Tuesday night live edition. Mako, Fian and Nikki, great to have you with us as always, and thanks very much for your contributions.
Pleasure. Good night, all.
Not a problem.
Very good, Pete.
Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next time on Tuesday Night Live. And as Fiend said, don't forget to join us on Thursday night for the preview and Sunday for the wrap. Good night, all.
Night.
See ya.